Okay, guys, we are here for DSLR boot camp, and this is our next unit, more advanced use of the camera. Um, basically, here's where we've been. Like we started off this course in terms of camera use, and you know we gave you the auto function, just to go out and shoot with the auto. Put you on this one for a lot of your shots, which was auto with no flash, but remember the camera's taking care of everything. We then gave you the P mode, and P mode we could do plus and minus with exposure. There were some adjustments with the back command dial, but not a lot. It would change the aperture and shutter speed. You never really thought about it, right? You just went out and took pictures. So what we want to do now is we're going to move on to basically three different parts of the camera and the mode dial here. We're going to be covering the the shutter. We're going to try some manual shots, but first bunch of photos are going to be on the A mode. And the A mode stands for aperture and priority, meaning that we are going to allow you to control the size of the aperture, and then the camera will determine what ISO and what shutter speed that you have. And why do we want to be able to control the aperture? Well, the big reason we want to control the aperture is first of all and foremost is we want to achieve a certain look with our pictures. Now, if you see this photo here, and you notice that the cat's face is extremely sharp, this entire area back here has just like washed out, just gone. That's an effect of what we call narrow depth of field, meaning we've used a very big aperture, and that big aperture is only allowing the camera to focus on a few things. And we like this because it looks pleasing. This is a cinematic look, and it also follows the rule of simplicity. Need to spell it right? Yeah, there we go. Something like that. Simplicity. Okay, close enough. Close enough. You get the idea. Harder writing and talking than you think. So what else will do for us too? So let's take a look and see if we use a teeny tiny little aperture in our camera, then we can do these effects like this. We call this forced perspective, where everything is in focus. So with a small aperture, everything is in focus. And that comes in handy if you're taking landscapes like this. This is an Ansel Adams landscape, and you would want the river and the mountain and the clouds in the distance, everything to be in focus. So we're probably going to use a really small aperture for that. Let's see what's some other things it can do for us here. So this is a good diagram here. So this is also based on what we call our focal length. This is how much, it's a combination of the aperture size and what kind of a zoom lens we have. But this is really what a big aperture is going to get us, like when we make our camera's number represent the biggest aperture, we're going to get a very narrow focus area. Everything from here, and in back is all out of focus. The smaller the aperture, the more things are in focus, until we achieve a smaller aperture, the smallest aperture, or a small one, 16 or 22, and you learn what these numbers are going to mean. Then many things will be in focus in the picture, and that's up for you to determine what you want that photo to be like. So yeah, let's take a look and see what we're talking about with aperture. So this is a lens. The lens is taken apart, and this is what you can control with your command dial when it's on the A mode. Is you're going to set what size you want this, and this is probably a medium to smallish size aperture. A big one you can see would be this entire area, and you can get the apertures down to be even smaller. Again, smaller apertures, like squinting, more things are in focus, but that's what you're actually controlling, is the blades of the aperture. We call these things blades. how do we talk about aperture here? So here's a range of apertures. Now, your cameras that you take most of the time only have a range of like f4, and actually ours go to in some cases 32, which is just a pinpoint aperture. So here, the smaller the number, the bigger the aperture. So a 16 has a smaller aperture than a 1.4. Now 1.4 lens, we're talking some big dollars here too. These 1.4 lenses, these things can be $400 to $1,200, because not only is the aperture bigger and getting this soft focus, is letting in a ton of light, so it's great for low light situations. And really, good lenses are in this range here. So the f1.4 to 2.8, real common lenses like f2, 2.8, these aren't that expensive. But the ones you see on most cameras, when you just buy the camera and you get the lens with it, are going to be from 4 to 16. So you get this range in here. So again, bigger number, and the bigger the number, the smaller the aperture. Okay, bigger the number, smaller the aperture. Another diagram explaining that same thing. So shallow depth of field, meaning that few things are in focus, and the more depth of field means more things are in focus. So when you get a smaller aperture, you don't have to be that concerned with focus, but when you have a big aperture, you really have to make sure your focus is dialed in. So I hope that gives you a good introduction to why we're going to what we're going to do with this aperture setting unit. We're going to take photos. We're going to purposely try to blur that background out, just like this photo here, and then we're also going to take some shots where we're going to have this forest perspective. I like these photos here. In fact, we're going to have a whole assignment on trick photography, and I think that when you finish with this, you'll really understand why that when you're taking photos, most of the time you're going to want to be in aperture priority. So aperture priority is kind of your go-to setting on a camera. I'm in aperture priority about 90% of the time, except when I'm shooting sports. So good introduction here. Yeah, I think it was good, and you guys can go work on 2 or 3 different aperture mode assignments to perfect your craft here.